The Giants have indeed agreed to terms with Matt Chapman on what looks like a well below, I want to say below market, but I mean, it's the market that determines the price, but below expectation contract. 3 years, $54 million. Platinum defender at third base, just dramatically improves the defense right away there on that left side with a heavy ground ball staff. Oh, and he's not such a bad hitter either. And oh, could Blake Snell be next?
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturday like today, if it's an emergency podcast, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since way back in 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan, and I'm coming up on 5 years hosting this very show. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day, including on Saturday mornings. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. Check us out there if you have not already. Please hit that thumbs up button, subscribe, bell notification, all that good stuff. And yes, indeed, friends, coming up on today's show, the Giants have agreed to terms with Matt Chapman. This is pending a physical, I'm certain. Like, we haven't seen that specific language, but the way it works is until the team basically tweets it out, like, welcome to the Giants, Matt Chapman, it's not official. And so when you get all these reporters saying that they've signed Matt Chapman, it's just like with Correa. So just so you know, it's pending a physical, I'm sure. And 99% of the time, these physicals get passed. And last year, we just ran into that 1% thing, and it ruined our lives for a brief period there. But anyway, the Giants are getting Matt Chapman, assuming he passes the physical. And what does he bring? He brings excellent defense at third base. And when I'm saying excellent defense, I mean, we're talking a guy who has won many gold gloves in his career. I don't actually have the exact number of gold gloves that he has. 2 platinum gloves, which goes to the best defender, period, in each league, not just per position. Defensive runs saved, 92 in his career, including 12 last year in Toronto. And outs above average for Matt Chapman, or let's go runs above average, which is based on outs above average, plus 40. And so it's not as high as defensive runs saved, but still, you get the idea. These are very positive numbers. Just plus 3 last year, 0 the year before that, 12 the year before that. And for defensive runs saved, 10 in 2021, 2 in 2022, and 12 in 2023. So these defensive metrics are kind of best to look at in 3-year samples from what I understand. And so I saw him a lot in Oakland, I suppose, but less maybe in Toronto, but he's still a very, very good defender. And so I had concerns about, like, I was asked a million times this offseason and just volunteered the commentary a million times about Matt Chapman this offseason, and my concern was when you started looking at a 5 or 6 year contract. I had concern about that for a guy going into his age 31 season who, you know, has been a streaky hitter, and defense does in fact decline with age as your athleticism deteriorates. But this is a 3-year contract, and so it is a 3-year, $54 million contract, $20 million this year, $18 million next year, and $16 million the year after that. And Chapman has the right to opt out after each of the first 2 seasons, either one. So, but the fact is he'll be getting older. And so when you start, you know, next year he would be going into his age 32 season. So he'd have to have a pretty big year to kind of want to re-enter the market. And if he has a big year, that's a good thing in a way. You know, you want him to have a big year people say it's like lose-lose. The win part is that he has a good year for you, and hopefully that leads you to the postseason, and hopefully deep into the postseason, and hopefully hoisting a trophy. And so, I mean, look, that's a lot to ask, but it's a lot to ask of any team. And the Giants, they need to get back onto that level where they're just a winning team. And I think culturally too, like Matt Chapman relationship with Bob Melvin that goes way back to their days in Oakland when, Chapman came up as a rookie for Bob Melvin. And so they're close, and they are, I think there's like a good veteran leadership quality to Matt Chapman that is really important for this team that quote unquote lost Brandon Crawford. I know that he wanted to come back, but Chapman just elevates the room. I think he just brings a respectability to your offense and defense that other players respect, like right away. Like he just has a presence. And I think when you pair that with culturally what Bob Melvin is trying to do, and Bob Melvin apparently really, really wanted Matt Chapman, it's just a perfect kind of marriage there. Again, my concerns were more about a 5 or 6 year deal. You're talking 3 years, $54 million. This is a massively lower contract than what everyone predicted heading into the offseason. Universally, people thought he would get basically 2 to 3 times this amount of guaranteed money. And so I'm not like, yay, he gets less money, but I'm just saying it's a good looking contract for the Giants from a price perspective. And the question is, I have answered this question myself, and I've come to a deeper conclusion after diving in even more. Like, some people ask, is he an upgrade over J.D. Davis? Because it kind of depends on what numbers you're looking at. And the ones that we're going to look at, I will tell you my answer in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you by our very good friends over at Factor. Eating better is easy with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals, which are literally in my fridge right now over there. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian approved, which is important to me and my partner, and ready to go in just 2 minutes. And I can attest to that. You'll have over 35 different options to choose from each week, including Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. There are more than 60 add-ons to help you stay fueled up and feeling good all day long. So what are you waiting for? Get started today and get after your goals. There's no prep, no mess meals. Factor meals are ready to heat and eat, so there's no prepping, no cooking, no cleanup required. And that to me is very important, along with the ability for me to get on the vegan program at Factor. So that's another thing that they offer. Just whatever your dietary needs are, they can be met there. So head to factormeals.com/lockedonmlb50 and use code LOCKEDONMLB50 to get 50% off. That's code LOCKEDONMLB50 at factormeals.com/lockedonmlb50 to get 50% off. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, oh my goodness, I cannot wait, or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues. and college conferences as well. Fire TV Channels lets you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the sports world. March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out check out Fire TV Channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV Channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right, as promised, we are going to get into the comparison between J.D. Davis and Matt Chapman and why ultimately I think that this unofficial signing of Matt Chapman is going to mean that J.D. Davis is going to be traded. I think that there's no room on the roster for J.D. Davis unless there's an injury somewhere. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers on Monday, we're going to be breaking this down more, hopefully talking about the Blake Snell signing, in which we're going to talk about later on today, how there's legitimate kind of buzz and smoke there. But to compare, you can look at like offensively, J.D. Davis in his career has, a weighted runs created plus that is similar to Matt Chapman's. And you can say, it's so 114 for Davis, meaning 14% above average offense for J.D. Davis in his career, 118 for Matt Chapman. And then you're like, okay, so you're just paying a bunch more money for just defense? And the answer is kind of yes. And the other thing that I'll say is that J.D. Davis hasn't been an everyday player like Matt Chapman has. And we kind of saw how being an everyday player wore down J.D. Davis last season. But at the same time, to be fair, Matt Chapman also had a bad last 5 months of the season. He had a monster April and then was like bad the rest of the way. Nonetheless, that defense is valuable. And when you look at, that's why, metrics like wins above replacement will add, some context here because it's factoring in defense, and maybe it's not a perfect, maybe it's not perfectly factored in, but it gives us a sense. And the people behind these metrics have put a lot of effort into making them pretty darn good. And all teams have their own versions. And the Giants don't make a deal like this without believing that JD's a big upgrade. And so what I looked at was career simple Fangraphs WAR per 600 plate appearances in their careers. And for Chapman, per 600 plate appearances, which is roughly a full season's worth of at-bats or plate appearances, Chapman's put up 4.6 Fangraphs WAR per 600 plate appearances in his career, and J.D. Davis 2.0. So Chapman more than twice as much. If we look at the last 3 seasons, those numbers have kind of come together a little bit, with Chapman averaging 3.9, which is like all-star caliber, and J.D. Davis at 2.4. And I think it's really interesting. So that's a 1.5 win difference per 600 plate appearances over the last 3 seasons. And what's really interesting is that you take J.D. Davis's salary, you take Matt Chapman's 2024 salary, it's a $13 million difference, and the cost between a 2.5 WAR player and a 4 WAR player, according to research done by Dan Zimborski on the open market, should cost about $14 million more. And so Giants are paying about $14 million more for an extra win and a half here, and that's what they should be paying for an extra win and a half. That's like kind of market value. And so that's interesting. Although I must point out that a 4-win player is supposed to cost $33.3 million per year, according to this research on the open market. And so if that's truly what the Giants are getting, which is basically what Chapman has been on average over the last 3 seasons per 600 plate appearances. So if you assume 600 plate appearances, and he has been pretty darn durable. If you look at the track, 100 in the last 4 full seasons or 5 full seasons, 145 games, 156 games, 151, 155, 140. So he posts, he shows up, he plays defense, and he gives you about 4 Fangraphs wins above replacement per season, hits for power. doesn't chase outside the zone. There is a strikeout tendency, but not chasing, hitting for power, and providing elite defense at third base is a good overall package, especially at this price. And I just don't see the room for JD Davis. You might say first base, but I say Wade and Flores are occupying first base currently. You might say DH, and I would say that's 100% Jorge Soler occupying that spot currently. And then you might say bench, and then I would say the bench is full. You basically have 4 spots on your bench with a 13-person hitting mix and 13 on the pitching side for a 26-man roster. And you've got imagine a righty is starting. Wilmer Flores is then on the bench because Wade is at first. And then Austin Slater is on this team over JD Davis. You need an outfielder. And also, you can make a case that maybe Matos should be there. And so you're starting to have too many quality players to fit onto your roster, which is a good problem to have. But let's just call it Austin Slater for now. And then you've got your backup catcher, which is Tom Murphy. And so then you say, okay, JD's the last guy, the 4th bench player. But then you have no backup middle infielder unless you're talking Wilmer Flores is like your backup second baseman and shortstop and third baseman, which he kind of does do second and third if he needs to. But I just don't see the fit for JD Davis, and it makes a lot of sense for him to be traded for, something else. So we'll see. Joey Bart also is going to have to get traded at some point before the season. So yeah. So lastly, I just want to mention that there's legitimate smoke around Blake Snell, and Susan Slusser tweeted it out last night. She said Chapman signing does not take them out on Snell. They're still very much involved. And then Alex Pavlovich, emergency podcast that came out late last night or this morning, basically said there's a lot of smoke around Snell and that there's optimism within the Giants organization about the chances basically of signing this guy. And so that's exciting. If they were to get Snell on top of all the other moves they've made and now Chapman, that would just be a fantastic offseason and would vault the Giants into that conversation for certainly one of the wild card spots in the National League. And you might say, oh, that's it? Wild card? Well, we're talking about the best team in baseball happens to be in the NL West, in the Dodgers. So it's going to be tough to catch them. But if you get into the wild card round and you've got, if you sign Blake Snell and you've got Logan Webb and Snell and Robbie Ray and Kyle Harrison and Jordan Hicks and Alex Cobb, suddenly you could be talking about one of the best rotations in the game. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked on Giants your first listen every day. Every day is on Monday. More about Matt Chapman. Going to be talking to Sully from Locked on MLB about Chapman and the Giants as a whole. And maybe there's going to be more news that comes out over the weekend. So once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again on Monday, hopefully sooner if something big happens. So thanks again for listening. You are now Locked on Giants.